If you didn't hear that previous intro that I gave, I basically just gave a quick hello to the Dusty Betty community, and also I'm hoping that there's some of the RLC community that we invited to come along and join us today. So hello to those that are from the membership community from my coaching services, and glad to be here on Tess's channel sharing everything I know about wheelies, and it's based on your questions. So anything that you've got on your mind that you're struggling with. Doug is behind the camera. Say hi, Doug.
Hey guys.
Why don't you show your face for a second? The beautiful face of Doug here in Gibsons, British Columbia on a nice sunny evening. So yeah, Tess, thanks for having us on your channel. It's great to continue collaborating over all of these years. So yeah, let's dig in. I can talk forever about wheelies, and I want to make sure that I answer everyone's questions. So what I think would be fun is that we just tend to questions right away if there are any, and it'll be jumping around. We'll be jumping around all over the place. So I might be giving feedback that's at a higher level than you're at, but then the next question might be at a lower level. So all in all, though, I hope this becomes a good resource for those that are on the wheelie learning journey. So Doug, yeah, anything poppin'? Any good questions coming up right away?
There is, but I wonder if you should demonstrate what a wheelie looks like, just to get everyone motivated.
Just in case someone or any of you don't know what a wheelie looks like. Yeah, I'm just on grass. Why don't I kind of go into the shadows here? So riding on the back wheel. So, well, yeah, there you go. That's a wheelie. I think most people know what a wheelie is. The challenge is actually performing one, but it's nice to get on the bike and play around. I'm starting on grass here because generally learning wheelies in the beginning phases, it's great to practice on grass for safety. But as soon as you start to get a number of pedal strokes and you have command over your rear brake to keep you safe, then you've got to graduate to a harder surface, which makes it much easier to control your side balance. So yeah, let's dig into some questions.
First question from Bill. Do you think having shorter cranks can help with wheelies and manuals?
First question from Bill. I don't have to repeat the question because you can hear Doug, which is great. Bill, you know, crank length for me, I've used between 165 and 175. Not a huge range, very much imperceptible the difference that makes. Gearing choice, however, is of far more consequence, as is saddle height. Both of those will be very noticeable in the impact on your wheelie performance. And I can go into either of those if need be for anyone.
Yeah, so Alejandro asks, what are your thoughts on seat height? So is there an optimal seat height?
Alejandra, yeah, no, that's a great question. Definitely. So I'll just demonstrate the full range. You can do a wheelie with a super low saddle. I'll just demonstrate so you can kind of see the range for me. And I do have a 175 millimeter range on my drop post. So a low wheelie, and I want you guys all to watch something specifically. So see what you can learn just from this demonstration. So I'm going to start with a low saddle height. Watch my knees. Watch the knee action that I use to maintain this wheelie. All right, so that was saddle down. Now I'm going to do a wheelie going this way with my saddle at regular riding, full riding efficiency height for, you know, like a an FSR road, a Forest Service road climb, not a technical climb, full riding height. Again, watch my knees. So, anyone notice which position I had the most knee movement range with? See if anyone notices. Low saddle or high saddle for the amount of knee, side to side knee movement that I had. Doug, I know there's a delay, but see if anyone's noticed that. And I'm just, just giving a few moments for you to think about it, but I'll just actually give the answer because I'm sure there's a few people probably chiming in. One of the most powerful side balance saving techniques you have is actually your knees moving side to side, sometimes together, sometimes independently, but that needs to happen throughout the entire pedal stroke. And when your saddle's at full height, the amount of movement your knees can have is reduced. However, when the saddle's too low, of course you lose a little bit of power, a little bit of ease of a smooth pedal stroke, which is also very important. So that's kind of the quick answer there. Drop your saddle and Tess, I was watching your promo video for this, and you just had a few clips of your practice session. Your wheelies were awesome, but I gotta say maybe the best part was watching Kit chasing around, playing around, crawling, playing about. So cute, so awesome. So I would say your saddle was a little too high, and I'm curious for you to experiment dropping your saddle another perhaps couple inches even, or at least an inch. So certainly for anyone practicing wheelies, experiment by dropping your saddle. Honestly, I used to do trial shows on a trials bike, super tiny, and I'd sit on the saddle was slammed, the frame was tiny, and I'd still do wheelies and my knees would be way out to the side. Not the most power, but it worked. So it's hard to go too low on your mountain bike, but experiment, give it the range and see how it goes.
Cool. Crystal asks if you have any tips on improving braking while practicing when being short and light.
While being short and light. So yeah, so you're a shorter rider and a lightweight rider. Tips on using brakes. Yeah, it's a really great question. So speed comes into play here. So the tricky thing is, this is a question I'm sure that comes from the knowledge that being able to modulate your rear brake to adjust your wheelie stance so the front wheel comes forward. If you're too far rearward, falling backwards, modulating the rear brake adjusts your front wheel down. So, and that's a very tender and delicate maneuver, right? And so being lightweight and short, there is a challenge of the experience of the brake being too strong or too powerful and being very challenging to modulate. A heavier rider may find it a little bit easier to modulate just because there's more mass to slow down, which actually smooths out the braking experience. It makes the brakes feel less touchy. So one thing to add to that is I would say that your speed actually is of far more consequence than your actual weight. So going on the weight side, so your speed is really what makes the biggest difference. Yes, the weight does, but speed is key. And so the challenge is when you're first learning modulation and the use of your rear brake, it's scary to go fast in a wheelie because the consequence of flipping over backwards happens faster, so you generally go slower, but if you're going slower, it's hard to feel the modulation. So let me just kind of demonstrate that real quick, as I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, could you go that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. There.
So I'm gonna go slow, slightly downhill here, using my brakes here. It's gonna be a little bit, it's generally slow speed. The consequence of grabbing that brake is much more abrupt. So it's a little bit harder to feel the modulation, and I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but I'll just get going a little bit faster and then modulate. I'll go downhill just again to sort of emphasize modulating. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm talking while riding. You might not be able to hear me. So that's fairly high level sort of coaching feedback on that topic. Might be hard to understand if you haven't really tried to practice modulating your rear brake while maintaining a wheelie. So I'll just stop talking because I could just keep blabbering and just get some feedback if hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and just a note, people can hear you well while you're riding.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So no worries about that.
Good to know.
Let's see. Adventure Muse says, I'm guessing flat pedals are better.
Adventure Muse is asking if flat pedals are better. Absolutely 100%. No questions asked. Flat pedals all the way for learning how to wheelie. When I first learned how to wheelie, actually I started on clipless pedals, and 2 times I flipped over backwards, not being able to escape the pedals, landing on my tailbone and on my back. So, and that was on concrete. I was quite a bit younger, but that memory stuck in my head and has influenced the adamancy that I want to emphasize that flat pedals all the way.
Cool.
And it's safety for sure. You can escape the bike really quickly, but one of the many side balance adjustments that you can do, I mentioned knees, right? Torso, when I had the high saddle, I was really needing to use my torso a lot more. You've got turning the handlebars side to side, knees. When you run out of knee movement, my foot tilts up onto the outside edge here. So knees move out and then inside of the foot tilts up as I'm pedaling. So that is actually something that I do all the time during my wheelies. Side balance, that's the killer in wheelies. I'm sure there'll be a question or two about that perhaps, but yeah. Doug, any?
Yeah, so Bill asks if tire pressure has any effect.
Yeah, Bill, good question. Tire pressure absolutely does have an effect. And I mean, it kind of relates to practicing on grass too. It's kind of in the same category. It adds a delay, a lower pressure tire that's squishy will absorb your balance correction movements, right? And so when you're an experienced wheelier, it becomes very noticeable when a tire is low. Maybe when you're learning, you might not notice it as much, but you want to have every advantage you can. So, yes, raising your tire pressure. We're just at the local park here. There might be a little bit of action, dogs, walkers. Your local park's the best place to practice generally for wheelies. So yeah, I would say if you're going out and dedicating yourself to wheelies a few times a week between trail rides, pump up your tires a little bit harder, and then make sure you remember to adjust them before you hit the trail. It's not, I mean, I don't want to give too much credit to that. If your tire's kind of flat and too low, then you'll really notice it. But generally, regular riding pressure is sufficient for practicing wheelies, so don't get too stressed about it. And especially when you're practicing on pavement, you'll kind of notice that. Ideally, you'd want a hard, smooth, rounded tire for kind of like a BMX bike kind of tire. I mean, that's kind of optimal for wheelies. So
Great. A question from Road Race Nut asks, what is the optimal gear, or is there one?
Good question. Gearing actually is such a, it requires some experimentation, and this relates to cadence as well. One of the things I notice a lot is not only gearing but cadence. And too slow. Generally, the problem is many riders, if anything, are in too hard of a gear and or too slow of a cadence. And because of the slow cadence, it makes it harder to speed up or slow down to adjust the height of the front wheel. Your cadence needs to be smooth and uninterrupted, ideally. And the cadence can adjust up and down while maintaining a smooth pedal stroke to adjust that front wheel. The only time to interrupt that smooth pedal stroke is if you need to pause your pedaling and brake a little bit to adjust the front wheel down. But that smooth cadence, especially when you're learning, that smooth pedal stroke is really key. Also, if you're in, that's the other thing about too big of a gear, I see this often. If you're in too big of a gear, then it also creates some extra torque, which can also affect your side balance. It makes it a little, you know, you're really having to use a lot of muscle power, slow cadence, and that can kind of throw your balance off from side to side. Too easy of a gear, though, is also a problem because you can't generate enough speed, or you can't actually pedal fast enough to bring the front wheel back up if it's dropping. So yeah, again, this is something to experiment with. You know, go into easy of a gear and see what it feels like. Too easy is, it's pretty tough, especially when I'm going downhill. I'm not going to be able to pedal fast enough my cadence. Too heavy of a gear, especially on grass. Grass creates a lot of resistance. Too heavy of a gear, and it's hard to get that. It's hard to get the initial pop. A little harder to maintain side balance in that heavy gear, but you know, it's something you've got to experiment and experience. I'll find the best gear here for the slope. So that's just to help you get a sense of my cadence here. Watch my gearing, or watch my cadence so you can kind of see the speed. So this feels like a fairly optimal gear. So it's often, that cadence is often a little bit quicker than many people end up naturally finding themselves.
Cool. Yeah, lots of questions here.
I mean, it's pretty endless. You know, this is why I've broken it down into 30 lessons, because there are so many things to consider when you're learning, and every rider faces their own unique challenges. And so, yeah, there's a lot of wheelie knowledge, and there's so many tips. You can't cover them all in one webinar. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Bill. Do you lock your rear suspension?
Bill, do you lock? Bill's got all the tech questions. Hardtails, again, you know, some of the tech things they make a difference, but I just want to emphasize that none of them are game breakers. You know, you can learn how to wheelie on a squishy full suspension bike with low pressure fat tires and, you know, a high saddle. If you're dedicated enough and you get used to practicing on a bike set up like that, you can still learn to wheelie. But specifically to your question, you know, you might as well give yourself every advantage if you have the option. And so, Bill, learning how to wheelie on a hardtail is ideal. That would be, you know, there's, again, the thing is that every bit of feedback you give the bike with your body to maintain your wheelie is instantly translated to results, right? There's no delay. Practicing on grass creates a delay for adjusting your side balance. So you make a correction on grass to your side balance, and there's a delay, there's resistance. With full suspension, it adds a little bit more slop to your adjustments. So those adjustments aren't quite as crisp and quick. So whatever bike you're practicing on, you calibrate to that bike, and your timing is adjusted to that bike. And so whatever bike you have is going to be the best bike for you to practice on if you maintain practicing on that bike. If someone learns how to practice on a full suspension squishy bike, they're going to have a hard time switching to a hardtail. So it'll take them some time to calibrate to that hardtail. Someone on a hardtail that's used to that hardtail will have a hard time on a full suspension bike for a while. Until you get good at wheelies, then, you know, for me, throw me on any bike and, you know, I'll likely, you can challenge me on this, I'll likely be able to wheelie it. But, you know, that's through a lot of practice. So that's kind of a roundabout general sort of way to answer that question, because a common thing is riders get stuck in their head that a certain setup is going to prevent them from learning to wheelie. Honestly, it can be an excuse for a lot of riders that something's not quite right, and that's why I'm not able to wheelie. I'm not saying that's you, Bill, but I just want to acknowledge that as a mental trap for learning to wheelie.
And Jeff Ma's on, and he says he can confirm that he's seen you jump from bike to bike wheeling.
Oh, cool, Jeff. Oh, great to see you or hear from you, Jeff. Cool.
Yeah, a question from Tess. She says, when I try to go faster with my wheelies, it's hard for me to stay ahead of it. Is that a gearing problem, or do I just need to more practice?
That's actually a good, you know, that's actually, you're creating speed, which can be very helpful. It's just a matter of making, so basically I'll show everyone what Tess is talking about. I'll just kind of go across this way. So I'm gonna pedal, maybe my front tire comes down and I have to pedal faster, and I can't pedal fast enough to get that front wheel back up into the wheelie position. Here's another example. starting the wheelie. It's going pretty good. And I can't. So that's a common kind of wheelie learning situation. And you know, there's a couple of reasons that happens. Commonly happens. And one of them, I'll speak to another mental challenge for wheelies, and of course it's the safety thing. It is, but it's a tricky thing. Sorry, a loud truck just going by. We subconsciously want to stay safe, and even if we're trying to do something like get the front wheel up into the float zone, into the front edge of the float zone, for those familiar with the wheelie challenge, into zone 1 of the float zone, which is the front wheel is falling at the same rate as your pedal stroke and cadence is keeping it up. So there's the perfect balance. That's where you want to be. Zone 2 gets a little too starts to get a little floaty. You can't pedal as fast, because if you pedal much faster, you'll go into zone 3, which is super floaty. Generally, you need to use your rear brake to slow yourself down to drop the front wheel. Zone 4, you're about to fall over backwards. So we're talking about zone 1 and below, just below zone 1, where you need to pop the front wheel up a little bit higher to maintain that steady balance. And if you're scared of falling over backwards, this is the mental trap. Your body is going to do everything it can do to prevent you from popping up into that zone 1 float zone. And that's going to come in the form of, you name it. The body contorts, shoulders round forward, arms bend, spine rounds forward. And it's actually opposite of what you need to do, which is to sit right back in the saddle, all your weight in the saddle. You're sitting right back, arms straight. Your head isn't rounding forward, your head's up. You're proud, you're looking forward, not too far forward. So combine that confidence, which comes from rear brake practice, combine that confidence with, again, ideal gearing, which tests it's something for you to also experiment with, perhaps also one gear easier, from what I observed in your video. So combine that with a faster cadence to pop that front wheel up, and that needs to happen. So I'm hoping, so that's one component. If people who are confident and good at wheelies can make corrections quickly, really quickly. They notice when something's going wrong and they can quickly adjust. So same thing when the front wheel, you can't catch the front wheel. For me, I can notice when the front wheel is starting to fall down too low. So I'll quickly pedal, increase my cadence, make sure I'm sitting right back to pop it back up into the float zone. But someone learning may not register that that's an issue, and so it becomes almost too late, and you're too far gone, and there's no way to recover. So you just spin out and the front wheel drops. That's the same with side balance. If you start falling over to the side and you don't make the correction quick enough, then you lose your balance too much and you just keep going to the side, and that's it. So it's one of these ramping, the mistake gets amplified. The longer it is before the correction happens, the less of a chance, and it's exponential, the less of a chance you have to save it. So that's one of the frustrating parts about learning to wheelie, is that as you're learning, you're doing all these corrections. You might think you're doing everything right. You're following the instructions. You're practicing all these balance saving adjustments. But the problem is they're not happening quickly enough and with enough precision. But even though you're failing and failing, slowly that timing will become more and more precise. So anyway, I'll just kind of stop talking. I just talked a lot there. So hopefully that makes some sense and answers some questions.
Cool. Ian asks if you have any thoughts on practicing looping out.
Ian.
Yeah, should you practice looping out, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do. I actually offer this as you know, you can learn how to wheelie without looping out if you're adamant about doing rear brake drills throughout your practice. So, and I've had many students in the wheelie challenge share the feedback that they've been able to master the wheelie without actually ever intentionally practicing looping out or looping out. However, I do teach that in the wheelie challenge because it's something that many riders just naturally end up looping out at some point. And honestly, it is something that, yeah, this is one of those things that practice. So there are some things to make it safer. It can be dangerous, like intentionally looping out. It can be dangerous. It can be hard on the knees, but one thing is to practice on an uphill slope, and you can actually, it's more dangerous to practice looping out doing a manual, because at least for wheelies you've got a butt on the saddle, so practicing on a slight uphill is helpful to practice looping out. Gradually work up to that looping out point. So here's the thing. Another way to sort of trying to say what I'm trying to spew out here is, it's one of those things that once you do it once or twice, chances are it'll happen naturally without intentionally practicing. And once it happens, the fear is basically almost eliminated, because then you know that, okay, if I do go too far backwards, then I'm going to be okay. The problem is, as you get better and you get more courageous, you start to increase your speed of the wheelies, and then if you have a loop out, it can be more dangerous. So that's where it's crucial to learn rear brake technique. I don't want looping out to be a resource for you. I don't want it to be a solution. It's not a solution. It's an emergency device. That's it. That's it. You know, once you learn how to use the rear brake, there's no reason you'll ever need to loop out and jump off the back of the bike. So anyway, you can actually, like, looping out can actually be quite elegant. It can be quite stress-free, easy. It doesn't have to be a production, but yeah, and I'm doing 1 foot off, kind of pivoting on the saddle. You can do kind of both feet off. It becomes a little more challenging. Saddle lowering your saddle can also be helpful. You know, shorter riders, we've got a few on the call on 29-inch wheel bikes. You know, it's going to be harder to just step off as easily as I do with long legs. But when you're with your saddle dropped, it makes it a little bit safer to practice that. But again, the only reason to practice it is to prove to yourself that you can do it and that it's not a big deal. So anyway, that's kind of that topic. A few things off the top of my mind for you.
Cool. Question from Alejandro. Do you have any tips on starting the wheelie in a controlled manner? Do you mostly use pedal force, or are you pulling significantly?
Yeah, so great question. That's an important one. So let's go away from the fan here. I actually teach two. There's two things here. I'm gonna do. Let me just demonstrate here. I'm gonna demonstrate the way I generally pop up into a wheelie. You can watch how much energy and effort that I put into it. Why don't I point slightly uphill here as well, just because that's when you're learning to wheelie it. Just a gentle, slight uphill slope is generally helpful as well. Slightly uphill also reduces the amount of energy I need to use with my arms and upper body. So I'll do one more here. So before I say anything more, let me show you one variation. This is a drill that I have in the wheelie challenge. Those of you who have done the wheelie challenge will be familiar with this drill, and it's actually a really important drill. More important than I think many people realize. So watch this is the key for this drill, is that you're doing it while going on a slight uphill. So I'm again talking about that sitting back in the saddle, arms straight, head up, nice posture. So with that posture, and also with that posture, riding very slowly with a crisp pedal stroke, as you can see, I had zero upper body movement to trigger the wheelie. And again, this isn't because I recommend that that's the way to do it. It's to prove to yourself that the drivetrain actually has a very powerful effect. And if you can rely more so, I would say more so on the drivetrain than on your arm movement, it will allow you to pop into that wheelie position with more control. And this was actually a question you had, Tess, was how do I get into that float zone when I start a wheelie with precision? And so this is a drill that can be helpful to repeat on that one. So I'll just again sort of do one here with a little bit of arm movement. That's kind of the rhythm that I have to pop into a wheelie. So I'll just continue on with one quick adjustment. So if you're going downhill, you're going to need more upper body arm strength to pop into the wheelie. And if you're going faster, if you've got a faster starting speed, then again you need, or a harder gear, then you need again more upper body arm movement. So
Great.
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, really good questions all around. Awesome questions. See if there was a couple other notes that I had while Doug. Oh yeah, regression. Yeah, sometimes riders feel like they're actually regressing in their practice. They might have had some good momentum earlier on in their practice, and then it feels like they're getting worse. So that is actually, when you think of it in the big picture, that regression is actually a step forward, because it's one of those things that, okay, I needed to experience regression as part of the overall wheelie learning journey. So actually, let's go away from the van again. A little bit less feedback. Did you find another question?
Yeah. So how important is it to keep your arms straight?
How important is it to keep your arms straight? So, yeah, good question. In general, your arms should be more or less straight. Not like locked out. Little bit of life in them. There's a little bit of bend, just a tiny little bit of bend. But the key is that the bent arms allow you to keep your weight back. They allow lots of movement in the arms. So as you're turning and steering your front wheel in the air for side balance, there's gonna be a little bit of elbow bend, but it's not just your elbows, right? It's also the shoulders back and forth. So it's not, so some riders might even bring their chest forward, but keep that relaxed back as well. A little bit of bend in the arms. Sometimes when you're saving your side balance, you might need to bend your arms when you're saving your balance. That's when there might be a little extra bend here and there in the elbows. But let me just kind of, I'll do a wheelie away and then towards you, and you might kind of see that. It's kind of bumpy ground, so I'll probably end up having to fight a little bit there for my balance here. So there's a little bit of arm bending, but that's more so when I'm going for that balance saving. Bump up a gear here. So when you're nice and steady and stable in the wheelie, your arms are going to be pretty much straight the whole time. Weight back. Even slight turns of the front wheel don't require elbow bend. It's more in the shoulders. So yeah, probably in more detail. I mean, I can just go into nuance with every question, and I can kind of keep going down nuance into more nuance into more nuance. So
yeah, maybe we'll do like one or two more questions.
One or two more, sure.
Yeah. Are you modulating continuously on your brake the whole time?
No, modulation. So generally, yeah. If I'm needing to slow down, or if I'm needing to adjust my front wheel down, then I'm modulating. So like there's a few situations here when I'm on the flat, I might modulate a little bit, but generally most of the time no brake action. But I wouldn't say most of the time, because for me, when I'm wheeling, it's often on the street, between, riding from one trailhead to another, or on a gravel road, or riding to the store, or whatever it is. And there's a lot of times where you might just get a little bit too much speed going. And so when that happens, generally when I need to control speed, generally you just pop a little deeper into the float zone on purpose and modulate your rear brake. And then slowly, as you slow down, you can still be pedaling as well as you're braking. There's, it's not one or the other, but you can still be pedaling as you're braking, and then you can, once you've slowed down, then you can kind of leave the brake alone and just ride in your nice steady wheelie. So coaster wheelies, of course, it's all, it's 100% brake, because generally you're going downhill and you're just kind of maintaining the wheelie, kind of riding your rear brake going downhill. But that's a whole other advanced skill, which is a lot of fun.
Cool. Does that feel good for you? I think we got most of the questions.
Yeah, that's a lot of, yeah, good. Wow, great round of questions. And gosh, yeah, again, the topic of wheelies goes deep, and you know, congrats to anyone who is on that wheelie learning journey. 30-day wheelie challenge, of course, is a great resource, as are all of the coaches and mentors at RLC to answer your questions. Basically, it's, you know, if we're learning to wheelie, make sure you use the comment feature in RLC and in the course, because you can submit a video of your practice and we can give you really specific feedback for exactly what you need when you need it. And yeah, Tess mentioned that she might do bulletproof basics after the wheelie challenge. You know, I actually recommend doing it simultaneously. It's nice to have a few other drills to do when you're out practicing wheelies. Sometimes you're practicing and you kind of get overwhelmed with the practice, and it's good to do a different skill, practice a different skill, and then perhaps come back to the wheelie practice. So Bulletproof Basics is a course that I just released, and actually there's 100 drills in this course, and it is designed for the beginner to intermediate level rider. If you're a brand new rider, boom, you're set. If you're an intermediate rider or advanced rider already, go back, look through the lessons, and chances are you'll pick up a lot of things that you may not even know you're missing in your skill toolkit, or it'll help you iron out some of the bad habits you may have acquired. So it seems to be that I just released the course over the last couple months, and feedback's been great, so something to check out. That's my plug. But other than that, thanks for tuning in. Honestly, I love talking wheelies, so it's nice to have such a great bunch of questions from a bunch of people keen on mountain biking. So thanks, Tess. Thanks to your channel, Dusty Betty, and all of your followers and your patrons. So signing out, Doug. Thanks for Doug behind the cameras, the marketing man for RLC. So thanks, Doug, for shielding all the questions.
No worries.
Bye, everyone.